Hello, welcome to the 2 p.m. show with myself, Gary the Geordie Yam Yam, and aka Derek the Mighty Win to my side. Now, obviously, today's show is obviously going to be a little bit of a hot topic. There's some religious sources in there, there's some very political sources in there. But what we want to say to you guys out in the viewerland is to be kind to each other. Listen to what people believe in. This is only an opinion. But like I say, where there's politics, where there's religion, there's always going to be the divided. So we're going to have a look into, obviously, today's topic, which is what we were asked to do, and that's all about sports washing. And we're going to get into that right after the intro. See you in a couple of minutes. Hello, good afternoon again. Me and the Mighty Win, and wow, we have already got some great people out there. We've got Trolls has gifted out a membership, so well done, Trolls, and that's gone to Ed's Mancunian Way. Welcome on board again, Ed. Obviously, you're in the crew watching along, and we've also had the American Mag himself. He's gifted us some memberships, and they've gone to I Am Shira. Lexi, Geordie Apart, Richard Naylor, and Pete WW. So, welcome on board, all of you new members, and thank you so much to the guys that have gifted the memberships. Like I say, for those people that have just come on board, do us a favour and continue your membership if you can. Obviously, it helps us out massively as a channel to get to obviously a wider audience. But I suppose, as we do all the time, before we go into today's topic, which, like I said at the start, it's going to divide a few. We don't want anybody in the background to feel as though we are any different to you guys. So we're going to do the housework, get that out of the way, and then obviously we'll get involved in today's topic. But like I say, be kind to each other in viewerland, please. Welcome to everybody watching across all of the platforms. Thanks to all the mods working tirelessly in the background. Do a great job. Don't forget to smash that like button for us if you enjoy the show. It just helps us get further as a channel. Subscribe. It's totally free. Bang that bell button for us as well, because like I say, once we upload a video, we're mainly live, but sometimes we do pre-recorded stuff as well. You'll get notifications if you hit the bell. If you want to help us, like I say, you can become a member for a small monthly fee. There's different levels to choose from. Like I say, the lads that have just been gifted the memberships and the lassies, you've got an open field. You can go and watch anything you want. You can also have a look at our webpage, NUFCtalk.tv, for all news and content. It's totally ad-free. Win and Chris, DX, a few of the lads contribute to the page. So as soon as we get it from a reputable source, we will include it. If you've got a question during the show, please put a Q in front of it. Again, we don't always guarantee it being mentioned because there is so many usually having chats amongst themselves. But if you've got something that we feel as though it's relevant, we will try our best to do it. But if you want to guarantee it, you can utilize the $sign, follow the instructions, and from there we will guarantee that message being read out. And again, all new members, as you've just witnessed, and people that gift memberships will be thanked along the way. So today's topic, I suppose, is like I say, it's going to be one of them. I just want to state for the viewers, I have no history or background in politics or religion, and my opinions, my views on it will remain with me. Again, I'm not here to debate whether people are right or wrong. We're just here to talk about what we've been asked to talk about. So let's get into what is sports washing. Is a term that has gained prominence in recent years, describing the use of sports by organisations, governments, or individuals to improve their public image or divert attention from the contentious issues. From hosting major international sporting events to acquiring a high-profile teams and athletes, sports washing leverages the universal appeal and unifying power of sports to obscure unethical practices, human rights abuses, and political controversies. Critics argue that there is a strategy exploits the emotions and admiration tied to sports, diluting public scrutiny and fostering an image of progress and positivity that may not align with reality. As the global influence of sports continues to grow, the debate around sports washing underscores the needs for transparency, ethics, and accountability in the intersection of sports and society. Well, that's it. I've done my bit. Listen, like I say, I've got no background in this subject. And that took me all of about 2 hours to write. But it is one of those subjects that will always divide. Me and you were having a bit of a chat in the green room. We both have very similar views, and we both understand that there is a need for the subject, but I always feel there's a need to look closer at home before we look afar. I think the troubles in the UK, for myself being from the UK, seem to be paramount in my mind to get sorted before we look at elsewhere. But again, that's just a view of myself. You've got, we did a bit of research, and the MAG have come up with an absolute, well, like I say, the best thing you can read to put some context onto it.
It's some time ago, and I remember reading it at the time and thinking, this kid has hit the nail right on the head.
Yeah.
And thanks to Jonathan Drake Coleman, who penned an article for the Mag 3 years ago when the SH1T hit the fan, and everybody was on their high horses about how Newcastle had been allowed to be bought by PIF. And he says, before I go on, I found the following passage in an article by The Guardian a while back, and I think it's worth setting the scene with. And I quote, "Here's an interesting circular equation. Bear in mind, this is 3 years ago. Manchester United are currently playing Paris Saint-Germain over 2 legs in the Champions League. Paris Saint-Germain are owned by Qatar. Qatar also sponsors Bayern Munich and Roma and has a foundation project with Real Madrid. Real Madrid are sponsored by the Emirates Airline, UAE. Another of the Emirates, Abu Dhabi, owns Manchester City. Manchester City are taking on Schalke, who are sponsored by Gazprom, which is owned by Russia, which is in effect at war in Syria with Qatar, which is being blockaded by Dubai, which is a financial services partner of Manchester United, whose next opponents will be Paris Saint-Germain, who are owned by Qatar, which is pretty much where we came in. Confusing, isn't it? If only there were a single figure who could stand above and wade through this confusion of interest. For example, Nasser El-Khelaifi, the newest member of UEFA's executive committee. Khelaifi is also chairman of beIN Sports, which pays UEFA for its Champions League TV rights. UEFA is investigating claims of financial fair play breaches by PSG, where he is, do keep up, the club chairman. You get the point. Middle East and Russian sponsorship, which is where all of these alleged human rights atrocities are taking place, are waist deep in the ownership and sponsorship and financial dealings of every major club in UEFA, to the extent where one of the club chairmen is actually on the UEFA board. Now, people last weekend were going online and saying how Newcastle's victory, yahoo, has been tainted by the fact that it's come about as a result of the Saudi takeover. If you're asking me, do I give a rat's whatever about that? I'm sorry, but the answer is no. And as far as human rights are concerned, I don't think anybody should be interfering with the way we run our country. So I don't think I have any right, with that belief, to think that I have any right to impose my views on somebody living in another sovereign country where they make their own rules, they decide their own government. As much as I detest anybody interfering with what we do, I have therefore no right to be complaining about what they do in their own country. So that's where I stand on the matter. What I will say about Saudi Arabia is, whilst it's often championed by the sports washing sort of fraternity, is that their human rights record is by no means the worst in that whole region. And is it any worse than what's going on in Russia, for example, or in China, who also have significant investment in football clubs all over the world? No, it's not, is where I stand. So the way I look at PIF's investment in Newcastle is they have something there called Project 2030, which is basically, in the light of all of the environmental concerns regarding fossil fuels, and 80% of their economy is currently based on oil production. And they want to get away from all of that by 2030. So they are using their not inconsiderable public investment fund to diversify, and so that they're having strategic international investments all over the world, so that by 2030 they will not be solely reliant on their oil reserves. And three of the main areas in which they are ploughing that investment, because they see it as high return investments, are sports, where they've went into, they've got the golf now, Live Golf. They've got all of the massive boxing occasions that they're having over there now. They've recently gone into snooker. And of course, the biggest sport in the world, which is football. So this is why Qatar have invested in PSG. It's why UAE invested in Man City. And it's why PIF invested in a Premier League club in Newcastle United. They're also spending loads of money investing in renewable energy, in transport, in property. And the Toon is just one of those portfolio projects.
A very small one.
Yeah.
I mean, everybody keeps on saying that we are the richest club in the world and everything else. But when you break it down to what you've just looked at there, in actual fact, I have got.
Well, if you took their total investment right up to this point in Newcastle United, you haven't even got to 2 billion.
No, exactly.
You haven't even got to 2 billion, and that's out of a sovereign wealth fund of 400 billion plus. It's probably close on 500 billion now.
Well, I did some digging this morning, and I've put on the screen now the type of things like you've just said there about what they're investing in. Now, I've just seen in the chat where is it? I think it's Darren Lee. There you go. Anyway, who's mentioned sports washing around Newcastle again? Well, we've won something, Daz. And the biggest problem is as soon as you become successful, it all digs up these, past historical and ongoing issues. And forgive me if I'm wrong, Tony. I think it was Tony T who obviously spoke about the sports washing in previous shows when he was doing some comments. So we said we would look at sports washing and what is being involved. Now, like Win has just said there, the one thing that I dug up this morning was what they're investing in. And the one thing that gets me, right, I mean, I've got it on the screen here, healthcare, real estate, aerospace, defence, automotive, entertainment, leisure and sports, financial services, food, agriculture, telecom, media and technology, transport and logistics, construction, building components and services, metals and mining, consumer goods and retail. And the list goes on and on and on. And what I look in this, right, and as much as we've all got the views on human rights, but unless we lock ourselves up in a bubble every single day and not utilise social media platforms, go on aeroplanes, because every time you do, it's what these guys have invested in. So are we not being hypocritical by shouting what Newcastle are doing and the investment behind the sports when we utilise all of the other utilities that these guys also invest in? Is that not hypocritical to you guys? Because it is to me.
And me.
You can't have it in one hand,
but he's
and then shout out at the other.
Yeah. What? I forget whose comment was it that you put up asking who's. Well, this was the BBC sports site.
Oh yeah.
The BBC sports site the day after we won, and the BBC, surprise, surprise, asked what do the Newcastle fans think about sports washing. So you've got Rory. Unfortunately, everything will be tainted for as long as the Toon are backed by such a brutal regime. I will be celebrating, but it's bittersweet. Stu, as much as I loved watching Newcastle win the Carabao Cup and something being ticked off the old bucket list, one thing I can't ignore is the Saudi links to the club and the awful human rights violations. It's probably why I don't buy any Newcastle merchandise. I'll be wondering if my money was going towards human rights violations. And there's scores of those same sorts of messages. By the way, they are refuted by plenty others who are saying, nonsense. But we'll have the regular spectacle on match days of the sports washing brigade being outside St James's with their banners. By the way, we asked them to come on the show and they wouldn't. So, you know, any anybody who's claiming you're only getting one side of the story, get onto them, because they were offered the opportunity to come on the show and debate it, and they didn't. They chose not to, saying they wouldn't get a fair hearing. But, that's predetermining what would have happened. But, what do you think, guys? Should Newcastle be pilloried? Should be the only club that's being pilloried for having investment from countries whose regimes, shall we say, are considered by some to be anti-human rights, or what, pick your own terminology.
I think let's just take it back a little bit, because obviously there's some evidence from, obviously, what happened. I mean, I don't know whether, guys, you remember the journalist Jamal Khashoggi, who unfortunately got murdered out in Saudi. And
Well, in
obviously,
Turkey, actually.
well, it was in Turkey, yeah, but it was obviously all part of, again, he was ambushed, if you like, by umpteen players, umpteen men, which was obviously at the time, there was some talk about it being the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman that had obviously set this up, and then obviously in February 21, where it all come about, and how again, this is that, when it all gets highlighted, and like I say, I'm totally remorseful about the murder of the journalist, and I have, for me, the way he was executed and sought after, if you like, it wasn't nice to be part of anything like that. But obviously, in 21, February 21, the United States obviously came out with all the information and all the knowledge on the facts that it was the Saudi, Mohammed bin Salman, that approved it, the killing, and how the body was obviously dealt with.
And by the way, subsequently invited him to the White House for a state banquet. So
Absolutely. And then
that's how bad they thought it was.
That's how bad exactly. And then obviously in October of the same year, Newcastle get bought out by PIF and Saudi. So it's already, and again, this is only my thoughts, right? With it being obviously delivered in February of the same year, all the findings and everything else. In October of the same year, Newcastle get bought out. So it just brings out all that emotion again from certain believers of human rights. And like I say, for me, I think there's a lot more going on closer to home than I can do and support in my own way than there is overseas. And like I say, there's people in the chat that will always have an opinion and a view on what's going on. And for me, like I say, why are we all of a sudden bringing sports washing up again? Because all this came out in 21 and 22. There's lots of people in the media spoke about sports washing, trying to take away, obviously, the human rights side of things that happens over in Saudi. But again, you've just said it, with Qatar and all these other Middle Eastern places that have issues going on. It seems to be, like I say, whenever there's a little bit of glory, whenever there's a little bit of success, it'll raise its ugly head again. And we've seen that with the BBC. And there was another report that came out again after the win, and this was a report by Taylor and Francis. I've never really had much to do with Taylor and Francis, and they've got a very abstract type of chat, and it goes into more or less about they're trying to throw a blanket over what's really happening in Saudi by them throwing money towards the likes of Newcastle. Um, and it's like this article examines the Newcastle takeover, interrogating the widespread portrayal of it as a clear cut case of sports washing, and explores alternative explanations for the purchase and potentially other sport related investments, drawing broadly on scholarship by Bordeaux and scholars of the Arabian Peninsula. It argues that the concept of sports washing, as it is currently used, limits discussions of wider, more complex social, political, and economical entanglements. Now, it goes on and on and on, and it literally is, um, a point of an opinion. There's we all know what goes on in third world countries. You have to be blind. Hence, I don't watch the news anymore because it just seems to be full of bad stuff. It's war on this, that, and the other, and it's a war of politics. It's a war of religion. There's other things. Now, I look at it and I say to myself, I've got family from ethnic minority. I was brought up for a few years in a Muslim way. And it was literally via marriage. It wasn't something that, as you can tell by my complexion, I haven't got anything within my skin. But through marriage, I was how can I put it? I had a little bit more of an understanding of where these guys take something that's been put out there for centuries, and it's a religious belief that you're not going to change, and not nobody's voice is going to change what people believe in. And who am I? And I keep saying, I said to my Sasa, my uncle, who was from Bangladesh, and if anybody's visiting Whitley Bay, the Sheba Tandoori is still there. If anybody wants a curry, it's a decent place to go. That's still family run, and for me, it was a case of I would never say to him, "You're wrong," because it's what he believed. But he was very westernized until he went to Mecca. When he came back from Mecca, his mentality towards religion changed. Did it change towards me being a Westerner? No, it didn't. I was still Gaz, he still took the mickey out of me, and he, uh, like Paul, who's my cousin, which become his stepson. Again, he didn't change the way Paul was as an Englishman. He didn't try to force it on him. But what we also realised is you're not going to change people's mindset if that's what they believe in. And he always used to say, the likes of the Quran, that's been, the Bible, that's gone for centuries. It's how you interpret what's written. And people, and somebody's just put in the chat, and I think it was Tony. I, I went to star it, and unfortunately, it jumped ahead as I was reading something else, and it was something about or I can't find where it's gone, but it was a great idea of something about stability. If stability became a law, I wouldn't think about going and stabbing somebody, something like that. And forgive me because, like I say, I've lost it in the chat. But it was quite a nice way of looking at it, because it is all about interpretation. And like I say, whatever happens to these people over in the globe, and somebody said, like, about you know um, USA being really bad when it comes to human rights. Now, again, I have no real understanding of what happens elsewhere. I don't get into or get involved in what's going on across the globe because I can't do anything about it. And if I was to use the energy that I have to go and try and change something that I know I have no way of changing, then it's surely the energy that I can be spending on something that I can change. And that's how I look at it. Um, and I'm just trying to. Geordie Dan has made a quite a nice one here. Look, sports washing is a term to bash up coming teams like
Up and coming
NUFC to
teams.
dampen their spirits. take the shine off the achievements, even when we still have the Ashley players and ain't spent multiple millions on in Windows. And I think that is, to be fair, quite true. And somebody else, I don't know whether it was Kenny, that put down about look at the state, the state of Everton, throwing in £600 million, and look where they are now. It doesn't give you the goddamn right to do anything with money. But like I say, there is a lot more behind the scenes that PIF are doing to support the cause, and it's not like I say always going to be towards the Newcastle team as people think. And I think that's something like we've kept on saying. As much as we do live in dreamland now because of the umpteen years that we had of being, the also runs, we're now involved in the Premier League hierarchy, and it's the people that are already there that seem to not want us to be with them,
Well,
and they will
that's the
throw
top and bottom of it.
a spanner in the works to suit the cause. Um, and as you've already said, the BBC, the likes of Rory and stuff like that, will always throw the sports washing crap towards us. Um, I don't.
Got Ian there saying no country is perfect, not even the UK. We were one of
No,
the worst at one time for being prejudiced towards other people and religion. That's right. And we've changed. As
yeah,
USA have changed. As most countries in the world change. It takes time. And the only way change happens is through the indigenous population changing.
yeah.
And there's nothing anybody can do to speed that process up, and all the wailing and moaning and criticising in the world is, if anything, it just hardens the belief of the hardliners and diminishes the effect of the protesters. Sooner or later, it'll all come good.
It will, and Darren's hit a good point there. You say everybody knows Newcastle ain't splashing the cash, and within the PSR limits, we've not broken any rules so far. Um, I mean, is that the reasons why we haven't bent the rules out? Because obviously you've made a comment in the past. Well, we had a window of opportunity where we could have broken the rules because obviously the Man
Yeah.
City, got away with what they got away with the third party, but we didn't. But is
No,
that because of all the
they've
crap
played
that hangs over them?
everything strictly by the book, but they haven't put a foot wrong, and good
Yeah,
on
yeah.
them for doing that.
Absolutely. I mean, Chris has put a great point here. Look, we're all hypocritical. We as countries have ties to do business with everyone. We hate and are at war with, and dare to say it, we hate them. And there is a lot of hatred. Like I say, the UK government. We support. We throw millions at supporting others in war, and not ourselves. So
And
it
and
is
there,
crazy.
and there's Darren again saying human rights is a joke. If they was against it, they wouldn't be getting football shirts made in China, which is where 90% of shirts are made
Yeah,
now.
absolutely. Yeah. And that's what I've just said. We're all hypocritical because if we were that far or that deep in this human rights thing, you would live in a bubble because everything that you use every single day, social media, is all sponsored and funded by the Far East. So again, you have to, and I live with a Polish girl, my partner, Ivana, and she's lovely, right? And when she tells me of tales of Poland back in the day when she was growing up, um, where you hadn't got a voice, it was what the government told you and how you could behave and everything else. And when she moved to England, it was like a breath of fresh air for her because she didn't know anything else apart from being dictated to. There's lots of countries out there in Europe close to home that still have a dictatorship, that don't have a voice. And it's only changed recently in recent years. You only go back 40 years in this country. If you were homosexual or gay, a lesbian in the armed forces, you'd have been sacked. You'd have been court-martialed and thrown out. That's only 40 years ago. It's all changed now. And that's what I said. It takes time for these places to switch that light on and become, perfect in any way. You, and for me, like I said, you're not going to change what they believe in overnight. And it doesn't matter what you try and say. And I made a point of looking at this one. And the one thing that really annoyed me about this, if I can find it, was it was more or less stating the it was us, the whole of Newcastle that was against uh, human rights, which isn't true whatsoever. And for me, it was like a case of why would you put down, um, that when it's just not fact? Because at the end of the day, as much as I do like what and read about what's going on in Newcastle and things like that. When you put NUFC fans against human rights, it labels us all, and that's not the way it should be. Because everybody has,
Tiny, tiny majority.
yeah, everybody has, and again, this is the article that I'm putting up on the screen now. NUFC fans, and I'm not going to go into it because I don't. I mean, again, NUFC fans against sports washing and things like that. It's not something that I want to advertise. It's not something that I want to give the light of day, if you like, because I don't have that view of it, but it's out there, and there's journalists that have not supported Newcastle since the takeover. I was listening to one this morning who is now supporting I can't remember, somebody in the Northern Premier League, and won't come back to Newcastle until uh, obviously the ownership has changed. Now, that he has his rights to do that. I'm not saying he's wrong if he doesn't want to support Newcastle. Now they've got a different ownership, but if he's got a season ticket, I'd buy it off you. Because I'd certainly bloody go. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's as you said, it's a minority that's forcing the issue. And like I say, with success comes the label again. I mean, like I say, there's so much in Ian. This is called this is so-called groups made up of jealous Mackhams and Manx. Um, I mean, again, like I say, Jake here, Khashoggi was killed by Mossad. Again, I'm not getting
No.
into this. Like I say, who did what and what did who. Centurion 84. They're all bitter. They took over us and not a cartel club, as they are finding some way to whinge about it. So the idea of sports washing, if that clinging on to now, it may not have been Newcastle. Don't forget a couple of years beforehand, Amanda Staveley and Mairdad were looking at Liverpool. They could have taken over umpteen Premier League clubs. It wasn't Newcastle. It just Newcastle fitted the mold at the time. They could get them at the right price. There were it's a big club regarding a fan base, but a very up and, if you like, sat in the doldrums of a big club, and never really been, well, say never, because that's again a broad thing, but for years not run correctly. And I think now it's a case of they're doing everything by the book, and I don't think we've seen the best of what's to come yet, because I do think, like I say, and in our chat constantly, sometimes I'll just look at, I won't reply to some stuff, but some of the names that people come with, and players and things like that. But like I say, we are linked to everybody. I mean, I read this morning now, because of all the talk of Isaac potentially going to Liverpool, and now is one of the favourites to take him. Moise Keane Now we're linked with Moises Keane, according to the Italian press. And they're now saying that, representatives of Newcastle have been to speak to Moise Keane in preparation of losing Isaac. I hope your money's in the wallet, mate. You know what I mean? Because it's going to take some wonga to get Isaac out of the club.
Indeed.
Um,
The group, the Newcastle fans against sportswashing or whatever whatever they're called. Whenever they're outside the stadium, I mean, power to their elbow for their commitment, because they take dog's abuse of 99% of the people who walk by them. And so, fair play for their stickability, if you like. But they do not, in my opinion, represent any significant proportion at all of our fan base.
No.
And
Like I said, I totally agree with what somebody's just put in the comments there, because I think you're absolutely right. I think what happens, like I said, we're advertising it, and to put it mildly, every time something happens, like we win, we get good media press. What people then do, they come out of the woodwork and start talking about sports washing and things like that. And all of a sudden, the emphasis goes from not the good stuff, but obviously on the bad stuff. And I think, if I'm absolutely honest, and I don't know how you feel, but I don't want to advertise it anymore. You know what I mean? I don't want to give these guys the airtime that they so-called want, because of the claims and everything else. And like I say, I'm not an expert in it, and I have my beliefs, and I'm virtually 100% behind everything I've read so far in the chat, if I'm honest. So I don't know how you feel, but I think we should probably move on to.
Well, here we go, Geordie Dan. If NUFC are being slammed for having Saudi owners, then so should the British government, who trades billions.
Yeah, absolutely.
Billions.
Absolutely. And that's what I said.
The kingdom.
Most of what I've read in the chat, while I've been reading other things, I can't disagree with. And that's what I said. This is the average fan now, isn't it? Not somebody who sat behind a media desk.
And this is the other thing that Geordie Dan is saying. I think we, Newcastle fans, can have a positive effect on Saudi Arabia, who themselves are going through a transitional period of change, which they are doing. Witness, women can now drive there. They don't have to wear the burqa and everything when they're out and about. There's a long way to go, but I am a half full guy. Join the happy clappers, Geordie Dan.
Yeah, well done. That's what I said. It's a great response, and that's exactly right. It takes time to change. You're not going to do it overnight. We've seen that. But things are happening. They do want, like I say, what you've just said there about the 2030, they want to be not reliant on the oil that they produce, which obviously they support, like the likes of BP and stuff like that.
That's the one you were looking for before, Barry. The idea that if your club is run by something seen as wrong, you'll change your mind on it is crazy. If we were owned by Mr. Stabby, I wouldn't think stabbing was okay.
Yeah, superb. I love
that. Geordie Dan, Saudi Arabia are looking to pump billions into Newcastle, which is more than any British government has done in the past. The South are happy for us to be seen and not heard, isolated.
Yeah, absolutely spot on.
And Gary D, why are the journalists not investigating the blatant discrimination and unlawful actions against Newcastle happening in this country?
Absolutely.
And Chris is saying, I've spoken to Middle Easterners and they say Saudi Arabia is a great country and they have a choice, but they choose to stay.
Well, I listened to the other channel when you again, if you people, there's lots of Newcastle channels on YouTube, and the guys on the professionals that are both working out there and have done for years, both say it's a great life. We've got our very own Roy out there in Qatar. Who again says it's an amazing life.
He
bringing
says
his family
loves
up there.
Arabia.
Yeah, Absolutely, and that's what I said. So it's not all doom and gloom like a lot of these journos throw across to us. Like I say,
Well, I mean,
fans.
Dubai right now is our millionaires' playground. Everybody's buying
Everybody wants to go.
pads
Yeah,
in Dubai and going on holiday. All the footballers now go on holiday there.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Trips was there not long ago.
Yeah,
Uh,
I mean, I've got a couple of friends, local hospital that I used to work with, and they go every 6 weeks because they've got family out there. That, like I say, their kids are growing up out there. Now, I'm sure they've done their due diligence about what they can and can't do, and and like you say, yes, there is laws that you have to stick to. They're not as soft as our laws, where you, like I say, if you look at
more's the pity.
yeah, if you look at some of our laws that are changing in April now, yeah, again, I'm not going into too much detail, but it certainly lifted my eyebrows. It certainly blew some wind up my frock when I read it, sir. So that's all I'm going to say on that. So yeah, some topics. I mean, obviously, this is all Liverpool plot to move for Isak. Again, that's one of the biggest things running at the
I
minute.
mean, we've got to talk about it, I suppose, because it's out there in the ether. But t- I cannot see anybody leaving the tune
No,
this
no, me,
summer.
no.
Not a chance. Not a
Uh,
chance.
Unless they throw stupid money. I mean, it's like everything else,
Yeah,
isn't it?
but it would have
They've
to
got to
be
throw.
really stupid money.
Yeah, yeah. Then obviously you've got the likes
You know,
of the
I've said in the past that everybody has a price, obviously.
yeah, yeah,
But any talk, for me, for example, any idea that you're going to get Isaac for less than 150 million, forget it. Any of the other crown jewels for less than 100 million, forget it. Probably Tonali even more. You know, Bruno, because of his age, potentially less, but I wouldn't take less than 100 million for him. Anthony Gordon, maybe slightly less, but they're all happy, man. They now know what it's like to win here, as do we all, and they want more of it, as do
yeah,
we all.
yeah. I mean, I was just looking at some of the response to obviously Eddie Howe's signalled a couple of Bournemouth players, and um, we all know that we were looking for a right winger and a centre back, and Bournemouth have.
Semenyo and Huijsen.
Well, it's Huysen and Mbeumo, isn't it? Not Semenyo.
No, well,
Um,
Semenyo at Bournemouth.
yeah. So I mean, there's talk about all these people, but Kluivert was talking to Marsa, which when he was at Netherlands for the 3-3 draw in Spain, and he was saying obviously he's a good player. Um, he's you know he's looking coming from Juve to the Premier League to obviously establish himself as a player. And I'm talking about Huysen. But apparently, it seems as though he's suggested that Real Madrid will activate the £50 million release clause in the summer, as they have been flattered by the progress of Huysen. So let's watch that space because, like I say, that could be one of those. Again, it's having the money up front, isn't it? And I think that's something that we know we've got, and now we've got a little bit of leeway to go and spend some dosh in the summer. So who comes? Again? It's still up in the air, but there's lots of stories out there about, and obviously there's. I spoke about the potential of Tonali going, and it seems as if Tonali exit is starting to rumble across Italy at the minute because it seems as if the world and his brother want Tonali to play for them in Italy. So, like I say, watch this space because, as I said before, I think unfortunately, well, I say unfortunately, when players are good, when players are playing well, you're always going to catch the limelight of
That's it.
the big five
I'm not
leagues.
in this category of Newcastle fans who get upset
No,
at other clubs being linked with us and so on, because all it means is we've got bloody good players that everybody wants. How
Yeah,
different from, you know,
years gone by.
3 years ago when we didn't have
Absolutely.
anybody who anybody would
We
have
could we
bought.
couldn't sell any bugger. Never mind. Um, I wanted to ask you about the Jonathan David situation because obviously uh, Steve Nixon and I believe Steve Nixon and Mitchell have made contact with David representatives about obviously potentially move. And again, this people will always assume if the likes of Jonathan David comes into Newcastle, then Isak will be on the way out, which isn't the case at all. We'll just need, like I say, somebody that can be a great replacement and give players a rest, but still be at the height of the game. Now, um, what was interesting with Jonathan David's reaction to obviously he's coming on a free to wherever he goes was the fact that he said wherever he goes to, wherever the future holds, um, he will need to continue to progress and be better than the previous season to have a chance in whatever league he goes to. And obviously, we've heard for months now that Newcastle have had a massive interest in this lad, and he's not done it. He's not had a bad season at Lille, to be fair. And I think if it wasn't for the PSR issues, I think it would have been. He certainly would have been a player that I could see us going for. But obviously, we've had to wait. And if he does come on a free, do you think that's a scoop? Or have you not really got anything?
Well, we watched Jonathan David in the Copa America in the
Yeah,
close season because we were obviously linked with him then, and he was terrible.
yeah. I
But
mean,
he's had a you know, if you look at the stats, he's had a decent season this season. But that's
I mean,
in the French league. And
how
I
many
keep on
times have we
saying,
said though about like the likes of Isak having a poor game, but he's still up there.
yeah,
You know,
that's,
you
that's
can't you
fair
can't
comment.
you can't look at a player for one game and think that that's it, can you? You
Well,
know,
it was three altogether.
yeah, I
I
know
think,
what you're
wasn't
saying, but like tournaments, you're playing with players so infrequently. I mean, I looked at England the other day, and as much as we won, it wasn't a great game. Um, and you start
it?
looking
Big
at the.
Dan had a great game.
He certainly did. I was really impressed with Big
Aye,
Dan
me
Burn. I must
too.
admit. I thought he stood out from the crowd a little bit, and like I say, very unlucky.
He was like Bobby Moore bringing that ball forward.
Well, I mean, to be fair, if I'm honest with you, with respect to the opposition, it wasn't great, was it?
Huh?
They did sit back and
You
allow
can
him
only
to
beat
bring the
what's
ball
in
forward,
front of you.
and that's exactly right, mate. I said exactly that at the
Boy,
time.
what I loved that header to go in.
Oh, it was a bullet as well, wasn't it?
That would have been the icing on the cake, on the cherry on the top.
Yeah,
of the,
what a
you
fortnight
name
for
it.
Dan Burn.
Yeah.
Superb.
As
So
I
yeah,
said
so
in my piece, if Carlsberg wrote fairy tales, even they would think that Dan Byrne's story was too far fetched.
yeah, absolutely. There's obviously I don't know how to take the stories of Bruno at the minute with and obviously Joe Linton had a really poor international break. I only got 4 out of 10. And obviously after watching him in the Carabao Cup final, and he was that night for Newcastle. If I'm honest, he was the one that literally got himself all over the park. And
Superb.
and was superb. And like I say, he was for me one of the unsung heroes because we never even had chance to put him in our merits because there was so many players that had a good game. But when you watch the game back and you actually see what that lad achieved for Newcastle, I felt it was, like I say, it was unjust really because he deserved to have a mention.
There was one passage in particular where he put a tackle in on the left wing. About 4 seconds later, he was putting a tackle in the centre circle, and about 2 seconds later, he was on the left wing clearing the ball. Unbelievable, man. Unbelievable.
Yeah, but again, the Newcastle boys have come under some scrutiny for Brazil, the 4-1 defeat to Argentina. I know Bruno wasn't involved because he was suspended for that one, which was great because of injuries, and it gives him a bit of a break now. Um, but obviously, Joe Linton doesn't seem as though he's going to be guaranteed a spot uh, if they get to the finals in the US and Canada and Mexico.
Well,
He's had a bit
I'll,
of a bad one,
not from his personal point of view, of course, he wants to be there and good
of
luck to him.
course.
But from a selfish Newcastle point of view, he ain't going to get injured if he ain't playing.
Yeah,
And as I
absolutely.
said, when Gordon came away, Amrit and I were in on holiday when we watched the England game, and when Anthony Gordon came on, and Amrit says, "Oh, Gordon's coming on." I says, "I wish he'd stay on the bench. He can't get injured on the bench." And lo and behold, he's on for 17 minutes, and he's out for whatever it is. We don't really know yet, but 4 6 weeks,
Yeah,
maybe
exactly.
more. You were
My
saying,
Yeah,
depending
it
on.
depends on whether it's the strain to the ligament rather than the muscle. So it could be a little bit. Well, it could be the end of the season. That's as daft as it looks. I don't know whether you had chance. You probably haven't. There's an article in the Evening News, Manchester, where you look at Manchester City.
Oh, I thought you were going to say Man United coming in for Longstaff.
No, 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 no. Well, yeah, that was a crazy one. When I read that, it was like what? But I'll take it. Now, there's a really good article about. I can understand where Newcastle and what their Newcastle are trying to achieve with the academy. Man City are looking to take on extra revenue from the sales of their previous players that have come from the academy, the likes of Delap, uh, uh, Will. I can't think of his name now. There was a couple of players that I saw that could
Howard
earn.
Bellis.
Yeah, they could earn Man City 97 million prize fund um, if the prices of these said players take on board, their asking price. I mean, for not kicking a ball, that's what you got to ask yourself. Not kicking a ball for anger. These players have moved away from Man City and could potentially earn them just under £100 million. It's crazy, isn't it?
Well, that's what
That's what Mitchell's
that
trying to
is
achieve, isn't it?
why building the academy is so important,
Yeah.
as well as the first team. And Chelsea have done the same. I mean, Chelsea have made millions of
In
tens
the
of
past,
millions
yeah.
from their academy.
Yeah.
I mean, Livramento and Hall both came from there.
Ian,
So
Ian saying the media are saying Tonali, Bruno, Gordon, and Isaac are leaving. It must be true. The media don't lie, do they? Yeah, I love that. Listen, I mean, we all know, like I say, it's going to take a hell of a lot of money to take any of the big boys away from Newcastle. But like I say,
I'm just that brings back memories there. He's not from Argentina, though. He's from Brazil. The old Mirandinha chant. He's
Mirandini,
from
exactly.
They call him Mirandinha. He's not from Argentina. He's from Brazil. He's real.
Absolutely. Um, I'm just looking at what. Yeah, I mean, Jake has put on here that David isn't an Eddie Howe player. He doesn't track enough. Well,
Yeah, well, someone
you know,
else had just putting in the comment there that they'd seen him, that watched the Canada game the other night. There, it was Jake and Ryan 2020. I watched the Canada game the other night. David seemed quite, or David, didn't it? Seemed quite a lazy player, but I'm not sure if that is Canada's
exactly.
style of play.
It is it is a strange one with David because, like I say, I think he's young enough to be moulded into an Eddie Howe player. When you look at some of the players that he inherited, we never thought we'd see the stars that we've got today. When I say not all of them, but there's certainly a few that have shone since Eddie Howe's taken over. And like I say, I think we're going to limit ourselves to buying players. And like I say, if it comes on a free, for me, it's a gamble. It is a gamble, but we've
Well,
we've,
that,
we've
that
paid
there's
nothing for him
there's multiple reports though saying he wants a £10 million signing on fee and 350 grand a week.
a week. Yeah, yeah, exactly. He's not going to get that, is he?
So you're getting him nowhere. You know, if you take that over 5 years, let's say he would be on, I don't know, 120 a week for the sake of argument. So he's wanting another 230 on top of that. That's 230. That's 1.15 mil, and then 5 years of that. That's another. That's you're just not getting them on a free then.
No, exactly. That's what. Yeah, but that's what I said. You can incorporate some of the wages, can't you? Like we did with Kelly.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
absolutely. You know that's why I was never up in arms about how much money Kelly was getting, because when you when you do all of the sums, you effectively cost with 10 million.
Yeah, that's right.
Uh,
And well,
and that's if he'd stayed the 5 years, but he's only stayed a year, so he's only cost you
million.
million and a
Yeah,
half,
exactly. It's crazy.
and we've
But
got
I mean,
12 million for him.
have you seen the scrutiny now that's come from obviously Juventus, because obviously they've changed managers now after some really poor results.
Yeah.
So the chance. I mean, obviously they are committed to buy Kelly if they get a Champions League spot, but under the new manager, he may not want him because obviously he hadn't signed up for the deal for Kelly. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens with that deal now, whether it does stay on board or not. And Kenny was saying here that, yeah, I know Bruno wasn't in the team, mate, because he was suspended. But I'm just saying, there's a lot of scrutiny over the players. Obviously, potential going to the World Cup finals if they get there. Yeah, Mag debates. I'm not going to swear because he's following your song. I would take both players in the summer, and me. I watched over 500 Thai fans in Bangkok watching the final. Never knew we had. Says Kenny. Mate, I'll tell you something now. Some of the videos from from Sunday that have been put on YouTube, you're absolutely right. The fan base of Newcastle now is growing exponentially. It's amazing. Not getting that Bruno, he's on 150,000.
180.
I thought he was on a bit more than that.
Bruno's on 180.
He's still the top earner, isn't he, Bruno? Yeah. And Gordon now has moved up to 160.
150, and somebody else is 150. Apart from Kelly, I'm talking about, who just signed up as well.
Yeah, like
J7,
I said, J7. Yeah, win-win with Kelly. We either sell him for 20 or we get a decent squad player back to the next season. Yep. There you go. And that's how I look at it. I mean, like I say, we did criticise him with some of his games because obviously he's standoffish. And yeah,
could he be a Barnes? Everybody's been.
It just takes him a while to get involved.
He needs a run of games.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we're going to find out. We're certainly going to find that out with Barnes. I'm not convinced, but I would love to be proven wrong.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because he's going to get a run of games now with Gordon being crocked.
Well, I mean, somebody was saying again. I've seen no reports on it. Somebody saying that the injury isn't as bad as we first thought, but I haven't seen any reports saying, because they were saying that they were still waiting for scans to come back because he's seen another specialist. Have you had any news on that?
No, still waiting. I'm still waiting after all this time.
Kenny's put down Gordon injury not as bad as thought. So, Ken, give us some idea of what's going on, mate, because I haven't seen the reports.
Where did you get that from?
Yeah, because I haven't seen the reports, dude. And
I've got Mark Todd there saying, I think this week's celebration will blow the players' minds and contribute to them definitely staying and in others wanting to come.
Absolutely.
Hope you're right, Mark.
Yeah. Well, like I say, we've still got a fair bit. It's a week away before we see Newcastle play again in the Premier League. It seems like it just, I don't know what it is. When during the off season and during the international breaks, it drives me insane because I just don't know what to do with myself. Because I don't want to watch other football. I know it sounds stupid, but I'm not into football that way. I love supporting Newcastle. and everything else is just he's just not there for me. I
Well,
know you watch.
Strasbourg Steve is our sort of font of all knowledge with regard to French football.
Yeah, he's saying that young lad was good.
Yeah, but he, I mean, he has said that he would take Jonathan Shaw in a heartbeat. So
Yeah, exactly. Oh, Craig Hope apparently wrote about Gordon, so I'll have to have a look at that because I haven't seen that report.
I've heard Gordon was severe bruising and soreness, enough to keep him out for a week or two. But he's suspended on April the 7th, so he'll be back in OK for that. Well,
cool. There you go.
You're right.
Brilliant. That's that's great news, though, isn't it? You know what I mean? Like I say, he's suspended anyway for the next match on Wednesday, the 2nd of April, and obviously gives him a decent chance to get that injury, whatever the bruising is, better. So that's great news.
And there's Foxy, our South American expert. Football's a funny old game. Joey Linton went from one of his best ever weeks to one of his worst. Brazilian media ruthless.
Yeah. They completely slaughtered him. Very much like we do to Longstaff at times. And I think, if I'm honest with you, that's literally about it at the minute. I don't think there's a lot else going on. I mean, obviously,
I will just get back to my celebrations.
Indeed,
which aren't going to stop for some time yet.
And well, I suppose what we should leave the session on is Isak's Swedish goal and assist. And if you haven't watched it, wow, what a dream! I mean, at the end of the day, when this lad's doing this at international, and again, it's against Northern Ireland, and people will always diminish the fact that it's the opposition, but you've got to be in the right place at the right time. And that ball that he hit from 25 yards, it was the trajectory of it. It was flat. It was just superbly struck. What a goal. And like I say,
I tell you what, he'll go a long way before he strikes a ball any better than the second goal in the cup final.
Well, like I say, like a half volley, step half volley,
and the speed it came to him as well.
Yeah,
everything about it, the execution on that was just amazing.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to be fair, you'll go a long way to play 90 minutes as a team, like we did at the final.
Yeah,
because like I say, I didn't see one.
Isn't that the annoying thing? That we know that this group of players can play that well.
Yeah. Do you honestly think now? I mean, obviously, this is going to be something that I would imagine we'll push on with now, but obviously, what I want to test the water with the chat. Do you think this is the catalyst now to move us into a guaranteed Champions League spot?
Absolutely.
You don't think there's going to be a drop off at all? You just think it's going to be?
Listen,
bang?
I think the double's still on me. I think we can win our last 10 games, and Liverpool could disintegrate. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, 6 out of the 10 are at home as well, aren't they? So,
yeah.
And like I say, there's a few of those.
The double's on, folks. The double's on. You heard it here first.
Yeah, good lad. Well, you said we'd finish in second anyway, didn't you? So let's see if your prediction is right. That'll be an interesting one. So again, that's it. Like I say, we've done over an hour talking about obviously a subject that, like I say, just doesn't really interest me, and I apologise if I don't feel excited about it. But like I say, we were asked about it and we've produced it, and like I say, it's not going to change my opinion on it whatsoever. So thank you so much, Win, for, as always, your lovely insight. Thank you to the guys sorry for the noise in the background. My dog is now having a mad session with his ball. Thanks to the guys that have given memberships. Welcome on board all of the newbies that have been gifted the memberships. Thanks to everybody in the chat as well for your input, as always. Great to obviously have all that information from you guys. It's like having reporters at the door when these guys just keep throwing the information at us, and that's what we need. Because, like I say, we spend so much time in the background doing our research on the subject. Things are happening all the time at Newcastle. So again, thanks ever so much, and again, thanks to my mate to the side of me, as always. Because, like I say, without him, the show will never be the same. And thanks to Chris, obviously, for doing all the background work and doing all his usual stuff, because he sets
And thanks to
all
Chris
this
and
stuff up.
Trolls for
And
gifting
Chris and Trolls
memberships.
for the memberships, absolutely. And thanks to all of the great comments, like I say, as always. If you wouldn't mind, just before we leave, if you've got 5 minutes, just throw a thumbs up. Even if you didn't like the content, which I, well, like I say, wasn't really enamored with, but we've done it. And like I say, I've given myself a like because I thought I'd had a great show. And I know he's given himself a like because he loves himself. And that is it.
I might as well. Nobody else does.
I've got get out of it. I mean, look, I've even dyed my beard for you guys today, and it worked beautifully. So, hello, doggy. My dog's come to wag his tail at me, and on that note, I'm going to bid you a farewell. It's a goodbye from him, yeah, and it's a goodbye from the dog down here. You can't see.
How are the lads?
Lassies and bairns. See you on the next one.
Catch you next one.